Hi, great to have your company, everyone, and welcome to Checkered Flag this week on C7 Sport as our coverage continues in the Autopro Super Sprint Series. Quite a program coming your way in the next hour as we present night one of the Autopro Series Round 8. In fact, this event doubling as the traditional southern shootout for sprint cars. So on today's program, you'll see all the racing from night one, and next week on Checkered Flag, we'll bring you all the racing from night two. Just before we take you to Geelong's Avalon International Raceway for round 8 of this tournament, a very big news story in terms of World Series sprint cars for next summer. Just a couple of days ago, the brand new series organisers announcing a very impressive schedule for next summer's tournament. We thought we'd show that to you right at the commencement of today's program. And it all gets underway in November at the brand new Quit Motorplex in Perth, Southern Shootout. And Stuart McCarthy, our regular pit reporter on the Autopro Series, had a chance to drive a sprint car for the first time. It was Phil Johnson's KFC car, and Colin Farr caught up with him to ascertain his impressions of these 700 horsepower machines.
With us now, Stuart McCarthy. You've been around sprint car racing for a long time, been commentating on sprint car racing, and now you've had your first chance to see what it's really like.
I tell you what, Cole, this is fantastic. I wish I could go to the bank manager right now and get a loan, because I want one of these babies.
You've watched these cars for years and commentating and interviewed drivers and things. Is it what you thought it would be?
It's more than what I thought it to be. When the push chute comes up behind you and then it just goes, you think, wow, that power. And obviously I'd love to have a full-on go of one of these, but I'm just grateful for the Phil Johnson team, Fred Edwards team, for giving me a chance to do this.
Mate, it doesn't look there's much room in there. Is it uncomfortable as it looks?
No, it's quite comfortable, like sitting back in the lounge chair, I reckon. A bit like when you're playing DTR on the PC, the game out of America. But yeah, that'd be fantastic. Comfortable though, nice padded seat.
And a little bit more respect now for the drivers, and you've had a chance to fire one up.
Oh, totally, and even these race suits the guys have got to put on. All right, it's not warm outside now, but hey, I'm sweating sitting in here now.
Oh, good stuff.
Thanks, Cole.
Stuart McCarthy with Colin Farr, and McCarthy absolutely beaming. Time now to look at the starting grid for the opening qualifying heat. Night one, round 8 Autopro Series. It's Ramsdale, McCubbin, Little, Bastow, Stephenson, Swayn, Murcott, Dalton, Knight and Scott. 10 cars engaged for action here. In excess of 40 nominations this weekend at the Avalon International Raceway. That was a start that will be deemed unsatisfactory by officials as Frank Ramsdale absolutely flew, and they bring them back for the race restart. I'm joined in commentary by the editor of Speedway Racing News magazine, Dennis Newland.
Thank you, David. And it's great to see so many cars turn out for this two-night Southern Showdown. I think we're going to see some great racing on tonight's program. The Super Sprint Series, the organisers certainly doing a lot of things right.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. That is reflected in the car numbers. Staggering amount of nominations for this weekend, and it's not the first time we've seen 40-plus cars involved in an Autopro round. Car number 13, Tim McCubbin, out in front, the PPG Auto Finishes entry. Beautifully turned out car, and that is a wonderful shot. The camera located down between turns 3 and 4 really puts you in the cockpit as it goes in nice and close. He's really streeting the field early in this McCubbin. Track could be interesting tonight. It started off being very heavy, and it looks to me like it's giving signs of slickening off later on, even at this early stage.
Well, with plenty of cars here tonight, certainly the track will go slick and hard late in the night. But by gee, Tim McCubbin doing a fabulous job. Second generation racer, the son of the 1972 Australian champion, and one of the all-time greats of Victorian racing, Graeme McCubbin, and he's inherited his father's talents, there's no doubt about that. We watch David Swan there in the number 20 car.
That was in fact Troy Little, Dennis, I beg your pardon.
Sorry.
2 number 20 cars in this race. Little is a New South Wales driver, Swayn obviously the Victorian.
And McCubbin, I'd say, has this race absolutely shot to pieces. Not too many more laps remaining.
Look at the cushion developing on this racetrack already because of its heavy nature. About half of the racetrack right now is not usable. That's the fact of life. Usable in terms of putting your right rear up on the cushion to get some drive, but you couldn't race up there. It's like being in the marbles. Here's our leader, McCubbin.
And not too many more laps remaining, as I say. And as I said earlier, this Autopro Super Sprint Series has been travelling throughout Victoria, having also moved into South Australia for a round and into New South Wales at the Wagga International Raceway over 3 states, and been very, very heavily promoted and marketed down here in Victoria. As we watch Graeme McCubbin now setting off on his final lap, and half a lap away from the checkered flag. Has this racer safely in his keeping, led virtually from the outset.
Nice shot as he sweeps through the top turns for the final time. The checkered flag is poised. There it is, right-hand side of screen. Tim McCubbin, who's been around this sport a long time, emerges victorious in Heat 1. Sydney's Troy Little home in second, and David Swayn in the second. Number 20 car finishes in third spot. Ron Dalton was fourth ahead of David Murcott and Shane Stephenson. Now we'll take a look at the grid in heat number 2. Jeremy Warren, Ian Lewis, the veteran. Rod Matthews, Ken Veal, Adrian Parr, Troy Sheilds, David Brown, Charles Hunter, Gary Chippendall, and Mike Van Bremen.
Certainly Mike Van Bremen, one of the guns of the Autopro Super Sprint Series, has a lot of work to do in this heat, starting on the extreme back mark as one gets out of shape there, and they're setting off on down the back straightaway.
Yeah, Troy Sheilds did something of a miraculous job there to keep it all tidy after getting out of shape early on. Early lead up is Ian Lewis. He's had a sensational 2001 summer campaign.
Ian Lewis, a very, very experienced speedway racer, having been around the sport for a number of years, not only driving sprint cars, but of course had some great years driving midgets, as we watch the driver of car number 9, Rod Matthews, there coming through the turn. Also on screen there, looks like driver of car number 96, that's Ken Veal. And as I said, Ian Lewis leading this race, very experienced campaigner.
Indeed he is. You'll note too, folks, that there's been some work done on the racetrack between heats 1 and 2. That sloppy cushion that was created about midway up the racetrack to the top of the fence has been graded off, and as a result the track is a lot more user-friendly at this stage. We just saw car number 18 blast past the camera. At the top of the straight is Lewis, the race leader, and you're looking at him. Brown in car 47. Interesting sponsor on the wing.
Yes, indeed, David. Yes, but Ian Lewis tucking down onto the low line there and trying to get around these cars here. Has no doubt some problems there, but he sorted that out and heads off down the back chute once again.
Nice to have you with us. If you have perhaps just joined us this week on Checkered Flag, you're watching round 8 of the Autopro Super Sprint Series. This event doubling as the Southern Showdown, conducted over 2 huge nights of racing. How close was that? Brown almost turned left, fortunately thought the better of it, with Lewis storming up on the inside. You'll see this event over 2 huge weeks on Checkered Flag. Hour 1 tonight is obviously the first night of racing. Hour 2 next week on Checkered Flag.
Well, there goes Mike Van Bremen in the number 6 car, the I&V car, as Ian Lewis on his final lap. Mike Van Bremen had plenty of work to do, as I said, at the top of this heat, starting from the extreme back mark and threading his way through the traffic, but still out of contention as Ian Lewis goes on to take the checkered flag and a good win in the second heat. Certainly undenied Ian Lewis. Ken Veal coming in second in the number 96 car. Third man across the line in car number 52 was Jeremy Warren.
Bit of aggro there. Lewis coming together with the driver of 36 in rather heated fashion, Troy Sheilds. Have a look at the amount of cars involved in the racing here this weekend. The KFC entry of Phil Johnson starts on pole in heat number 3. John Vogels, Anderson, Darren Walsh, Darren Russell. Then we go down to Graeme Pitcher, David Smith, David Van Bremen, Brent Hough, and Mark Smith. Away we go. The foundations well and truly rock here at the Avalon International Raceway when all of these drivers stand on the gas.
Yeah, they certainly do, Dave. And there's no doubt about it. The 2 nights here, there'll be plenty of drivers standing on the gas. Some great sprint car action coming your way at the Avalon International Raceway. There's David Anderson in the number 37 Mobile Cranes entry, moving up onto the outside there of the driver of car number 22. That's Darren Walsh. But David Anderson looking really strong in this heat. Had a bit of work to do to come through from the middle order starting position, and doing it pretty well, or actually he's out of position number 3, in fact, David Anderson in this heat. There he is on screen, having driven sprint cars for many, many years, a solid campaigner on the national trial for a number of seasons, runs all of the major sprint car shows, and a very popular man in Australian sprint car racing is David Anderson.
Is Vogels making a move on the outside in car number 70. Just quickly to explain to you folks the format as you look at Johnson momentarily in the KFC car, and also the driver of 84 being Graeme Pitcher. 2 rounds of heats per car in night 1 of this event this weekend. The first round of heats are drawn from a hat to determine the starting positions for Heat 1, 2, 3 and 4. Each heat will be conducted over 10 laps. The second round of heats will be inverted. Each driver will have an inside row start and an outside row start. Points obtained through the heats will determine qualifying positions in the A, B and C mains. Obviously the C main, which comes your way later on the program, a 10-lap journey, the top 4 to transfer to the B main, the B main a 15-lapper, the top 4 to transfer to the A main.
Certainly a good format, David, and it really will not only test the drivers, but certainly give the race fans, and that's what it's all about, looking after the race fans, making it an entertaining package. And the organisers have done a great job in that area, and the fans here at Avalon are in store for some great racing. There's the driver of car number 55, Phil Johnson. David Anderson now making work a little bit tough for Johnson, but Johnson sticking to his task nicely through turn number 4. But David Anderson there still holding down that 3rd spot.
And here's our race leader, not far for him to run now before he sees the checkered flag. There it is right now. I'll tell you what, he ended up streeting them. Here comes our 2nd place driver in the red KFC car, Phil Johnson. He defeats David Anderson for the runner-up posse. So Vogels, Johnson, Anderson. We've seen 3 very comfortable winners so far in these qualifying heats. Tim McCubbin initially, then Ian Lewis, and now John Vogels. Another look at some of the replay action and how Vogels took the race lead. Dennis was talking about the series organisers before. I know that they would be particularly grateful for the assistance this weekend supplied by I&V Truck and Trailer Repairs, who jumped on board as a major sponsor of this Southern Showdown at Avalon Raceway this weekend. Heat 4 now of 8 qualifying heats sees Peter Telford on pole, Donaldson, Nelson, Knight, Lawless, Moole, Hunter, Judd, Bulmer and Docherty. Huge lineup of starters here tonight.
It certainly is. I think one driver to keep your eye on in this heat, David, is the driver of car number 11, Jeff Judd, going from near the back of the field. He's been one of the prominent runners in the Autopro Super Sprint Series, but certainly has his work cut out in this heat. There's Judd in the number 11 car, running 2nd last on the racetrack at the present time. Looks like a complete restart. The officials not happy with the starting order that time.
Yep, they've got to be fairly fierce on that. We often see drivers having a rush of adrenaline, getting away to a bad start. I'll tell you what, not a bad crowd in here tonight too. What you always find in Speedway, no matter how big the event may be, if it's a 2-night show, the second night is always the one they come to. So doesn't that augur well for tomorrow night? It'll be an absolute packed stadium here. Oh, there's a problem. Jeff Judd getting up.
Well, Judd on further problems
happening
down the back straightaway there, as just trying to pick up the cars, other cars involved there. It's car number 53, of course. That's Tony Mule. And just trying to check the other car. I think it might have been car number 12, Colin Bulmer.
Yeah, who has been running all right in this series. Judd up on the inside, and Bulmer gets angry about that and tries to get back at him. And you can see for yourselves.
The end result there is some of the other drivers take evasive action.
Poor old Tony Moole had no chance in the world.
Okay.
Ron Donaldson, we just had a nice shot of in 29, and he's going to lead them away. I was about to say, before all hell broke loose, Jeff Judd in the Autopro car. He won the opening round of this series at Nyora Raceway in Victoria. It seems like an eternity ago, about November last year.
Yes, I was on hand for that opening round of the series, David, and it does seem a long, long time ago. That's exactly right. And on that particular night, if I remember so, the way he drove, it was a big effort by Jeff Judd, and he's been a pretty prominent runner and consistent point scorer right throughout the series, as has been Mike Van Bremen and I&V Truck and Trailer Repairs, the man behind that organisation, Ian Lowe, one of the very, very strong supporters of Victorian sprint car racing. And full marks to him for getting behind this Southern Showdown 2-night spectacular.
There's Ron Donaldson. Got to mention too, for sprint car fans watching our coverage on C7, some very unfortunate news emerging from the United States just a few days ago. Sydney's Brooke Tatnall, the reigning World Series Sprint Cars champion, has lost his drive, Dennis.
Yeah,
very. In the world of outlaws.
Yes, David. Most unfortunate, of course. Over in the United States, it's a pretty tough business, and they only really pay on results. And it was not so much the car owner, Lonnie Parsons' decision, but the sponsors wanted to know why the consistent results were not there. I mean, it's not to say that Brooke had not done well. In fact, his performances were very, very good, but it wasn't consistent enough for the sponsors. And as I say, they only really pay on results, and Lonnie Parsons was most regretful that it had to become a parting of the ways. I hasten to add they parted on amicable terms, but that doesn't help Brooke too much. Now looking for a ride on the World of Outlaws Trail.
Indeed, we wish him well, and Father George and many members of the Tacknell family watching Checkered Flag right now. I can assure you they're avid viewers of the program. We wish Brooke all the very best. He certainly doesn't deserve that, but it is a tough old game. Motorsport. Ron Donaldson, nice shot of him out of turn number 4. He takes victory in heat number 4. Peter Telford second and Charles Hunter third. We've seen well racing thus far that's been a little processional, and as the track starts to dry out, you would find, I think, that the racing will become infinitely better. You're watching round 8 of the Autopro Super Sprint Series, and we're coming back in a qualifying heat number 5. Mike Van Bremen will start on pole in car number 6. Steve Knight on the outside of the front row. Then Hunter Murcott on row 2. Sheilds and Stephenson. Next is Veal and Little, Ian Lewis and Frank Ramsdale whipping in this 10-car field. And we got them underway. A little bit of dust now starting to bite on this racetrack as drivers search for racing room.
David, Mike Van Bremen will be certainly hard to run down after starting off the pole position in the INV Truck Repairs car number 6. There he is leading, but certainly has been pressed pretty hard there by the driver of car number 71, doing a good job and just trying to pick
David
up.
Murcott.
David Murcott is the driver, you're correct. So Mike Van Bremen not as easy as perhaps he might have first thought.
Yeah, track's starting to break up a bit. There's some very challenging ruts developing on turns 1 and 2. That's all part and parcel of dirt track racing. It separates the men from the boys. A lot of drivers like the track rough. Been many of them over the years. One that springs to mind is indeed Max Dumsney, who just loves dropping the right rear in the crevices on the racetrack. He reckons it makes him go faster.
Yeah, well, of course, many of these drivers who have run in the United States, some of their tracks over there are legendary for how rough they are, and most of the campaigners in the US, as you say, Max in particular, doesn't mind a rough track. But here's Mike Van Bremen, and just harking back a little bit to that news on Brooke Tacknell, if I might just also add that the number 6 General Casey's stall entry that Brooke was driving, it now appears as though Johnny Herrera will be taking over that car. And of course, Johnny Herrera several years ago did do a driving stint for car owner Lonnie Parsons. So it appears now Johnny Herrera back driving for the General Casey stalls number 6 car.
Watching the battle for first and second here at Avalon International Raceway. Mike Van Bremen in the INV Truck Repairs entry is very much under siege from David Murcott, who came up on the inside of him. They actually touched wheels. Murcott thought, I'm going to get the heck out of there, and was happy to drop back behind Mike Van Bremen, and that was because he could see the slower traffic in front of him. He had nowhere to go. Half a lap to negotiate now, and the slower traffic has done Mike Van Bremen a fair bit of good here. Off turn 4, he's going to take the win. It really did cost David Murcott his momentum. He finished second on the racetrack ahead of Ian Lewis. So a couple of the big guns out to play at the Southern Showdown.
That was a great race, David. Yeah, it's right, as you call it. That last lap there, Murcott did lose a lot of ground in the lap traffic. And this, of course, allowed Mike Van Bremen. You can see he got away to a good start there, but Murcott went with him. And then they set it out, getting through the ruts there. Cars getting a little bit out of shape too, as the rest of the field sorts themselves out. One going right around the outside there, looked like just trying to pick up that car as they run down the back section. But here's Mike Van Bremen leading off turn number 4. Murcott giving chase there, but Van Bremen, to his credit, starters in the next heat: Dalton, Chippendall, David Swan, Brown, Bastow, Adrian Parr, Tim McCubbin, Rod Matthews, Ashley Scott, and Jeremy Warren. This is heat number 6.
So the inversion applying here. McCubbin winning his first heat comfortably. Now he goes back towards the rear of the pack. Gee, I'll tell you what, turns 1 and 2, no place for the faint-hearted. Have a look at this. They're 3 wide as they run down the back straight. There's McCubbin up on the inside of Brown. They're banging wheels. It's more like dodging cars out there.
Oh, it certainly is. There's no doubt. And of course, as the track gets slicker and harder, tyre compounds and tyre wear, particularly in the main event later in tonight's program, will play a very important part in proceedings.
David Swayn in the Hungry Hound entry leads them out in front. You've got to be careful not to call it the Huckleberry Hound entry, haven't you?
Well, there's
one of my all-time favourite characters, I must say.
That's right, one of the all-time legends. As we watch the driver of...
Thanks for your support, mate.
As we watch the rest of the field coming down the main straightaway here at Avalon International Raceway. And David, you mentioned at the top of the show, World Series Sprint Cars on the road again next season. A new franchise, a new package, and it certainly augurs well for a boom summer racing season, the 2001-2002 summer racing season. And I think one of the highlights of the schedule recently released by World Series Sprint Cars is that several two-night shows will be a part of the season schedule.
Yeah, you're right. The World Series Sprint Cars tournament now under the control of David Lander. Look at that. David Brown has slammed his, well, very interestingly sponsored car into the wall, and he's sustained some serious front end damage there. Another look. He just gets out of shape. Watch the right-hand side of the racetrack. Bang. Just one of those things all by himself.
Yes, he has nobody else to blame but himself there, continuing on careering into the wall again down into turn number 1, bringing out the yellow lights.
Just getting back to World Series for a moment, obviously David Lander, impeccable credentials, the owner of the Newcastle and Gunnedah Speedways, and up until a couple of days ago also the owner of the Parramatta Speedway, which has now been sold to a new consortium, as we see a pretty big incident here at Avalon Raceway involving Adrian Parr in car 77, and it looks to be Judd.
Yes, I think David too, with the track becoming very skatey and it's getting very slick too, and track conditions are certainly proving a handful for some of the competitors. They just lost it in the turn there and go straight out into the wall. And of course Adrian Parr, really the innocent victim there, left really with nowhere to go, as officials once again send these cars on their journey.
Yeah, that other driver, by the way, was Ron Dalton in 44. It wasn't Judd.
Okay, as the field down the back straightaway once again, but David Swan and Tim McCubbin there on screen at the present time, holding down, I think you'll find, second or third on the racetrack, just checking his position. Driver of car number 9 also moving through there as they come down the back straightaway. That's Rod Matthews. There's Tim McCubbin on screen. Tim McCubbin, I think, currently placed second. Driver of car number 20, David Swan, leading, keeping out of all of the trouble on this rather eventful heat.
David Swayn through turns 3 and 4, up the main straight, leading fairly comfortably now. He's been very steady in this series throughout this campaign. And once again, we're seeing our race leader clearing out. The only race that hasn't really applied was the Van Bremen David Murcott race in heat number 5, but all of the other heats have produced fairly easy victories. There's Matthews on screen negotiating the lower part of the racetrack. He was monoing momentarily as well, but David Swayn out of turn 4 takes the checkered flag. Garry Chippendall will get home in second in car 61, and Tim McCubbin, so far so good for the driver of car number 13, a heat win and a third place from his 2 starts. There's McCubbin on the inside of Garry Chippendall. Certainly, David. Tim McCubbin has been a consistent runner in the early portion of tonight's program, but no doubting the race winner David Swayn, he looked really good early on, and look at these problems here as the drivers hurdle the ruts through turn number 1. Rod Matthews there going through on the inside of car number 61, Garry Chippendall. So we turn our attention now to heat number 7 of the Southern Showdown, and the man on the pole position, Graeme Docherty. Sharing the front row, Brent Hough, Jeff Judd out of position 3, David Smith, Tony Mule, Darren Russell, Peter Knight, David Anderson starting from 8, Ron Donaldson out of position number 9, and going from the extreme back mark, position number 10, the driver Phil Johnson. Docherty's machine, nicely turned out car. Let's see if it runs as good as it looks there. All a little cautious. Look at David Anderson getting by on the outside. Oh, there's all sorts of mayhem happening here on the exit to turn number 2. And poor old Anderson, who was on an absolute flyer around the outside, has slammed the wall. That's bad luck for David Anderson in that incident. Just trying to pick up what actually did happen here as they go into turn number 1. Track very skatey. Yeah, the wide shot will show it a little bit better. And, I mean, it was just one of those things. It was a racing incident.
Yeah, bad luck indeed as one goes via the infield there. But restart once again. Graeme Docherty slow to get away, in fact, that time, as the rest of the field moves through turn number 1. Graeme Docherty all out of shape, causing a bit of a chain reaction behind him too as they go down the yellow lights. Officials not happy with the start that time.
Yeah, Docherty is extremely slow and is causing all sorts of problems. Let's be honest about it. Darren Russell in car number 30 had the opportunity of starting up front. I mean, Docherty's out there doing his best, but, you know, I know they've got a format which sees an inversion in this case, but he should be starting at the back of the pack.
I think that's a fair call, David. Yes, there's no doubt about that.
Jeff Judd has been shown the rear of field flag, so officials not happy in relation to something that driver's done.
Okay, well, they set them away once again, and Jeff Judd with a bit of work to do now, and already quickly into stride there in the number 11 car.
Yeah, track's proving to be fairly difficult for them at the moment. We saw Peter Knight there, got a shot of him. Meanwhile, Russell in car number 30 out in front. Second place on the racetrack occupied by Tony Moole. There's 45 heading to the infield, David Smith. So some of the drivers looking decidedly untidy out there at the moment. Turns 3 and 4 is okay. All the ruts are appearing right about here on the track. Turns 1 and 2 and the entry onto the back straight.
That's right, David. Down the back section of the course once again, as this field sorts themselves out into turn number 1. And the driver of car number 30, Darren Russell, Tony Mule in car number 53, also doing a good job in this heat.
Russell will find himself under siege shortly. I can see Judd coming quickly at him. 53, Tony Mule out in front. The fast fit entry.
David, this past week in Australian Speedway, the Australian Speedway Promoters Association met for their annual conference in Queensland. Some interesting news items to come out of the conference. Of course, the Australian Sprint Car Championship has been granted the Parramatta City Raceway a new format for the 2001-2002 season National Sprint Car title, run over three nights. And I guess with the new promotional consortium of Parramatta City Raceway, it not only will be a very heavily marketed and sponsored event, but certainly as far as the drivers are concerned, already the reaction with a new format over 3 nights has been widely accepted.
Yes, one of the other major talking points to emerge from that conference is the fact that a consortium under the company name of Dirt Late Model Racing have proposed to Australian Speedway promoters a 20-round late model sedan series, which will include 4 American drivers, commencing in November in Western Australia, sweeping right across the country. Late model sedans, huge business in the United States of America, and they're starting to get a foothold in this country as well. As we see our race winner getting across the line, Tony Moole, he won easily. We've really seen hardly any winners threatened tonight. I think I've mentioned that once or twice, Van Bremen and Murcott earlier on, the only exceptions to that rule. Moole, Judd, Darren Russell. That was the results for you in an uneventful heat number 7.
David, Jeff Judd was really the big mover in this one. He's done a fabulous job on a tricky circuit. Conditions not the best, coming through for a very, very deserving second place finish there. You can see him working pretty hard in the office of the number 11 car, taking it right up onto the high line there, sweeping around the outside onto the back section of the course. A big drive from Jeff Judd.
Now heat number 8 sees David Van Bremen, Colin Bulmer, Graham Pitcher, Darren Maggs, Darren Walsh, Lawless, John Vogels, Nelson, Smith and Telford lining up here. This is the final qualifying heat. The C main will be next on the program. And once again, no place for the faint-hearted as they race through turns 1 and 2. We've got ourselves a problem there. It was Graham Pitcher almost pitching it into the wall, but did well to keep it away. Have a look at the officials. Scamper on the infield as car 23 was bearing down upon them. Marcus Nelson.
Well, David, the action coming thick and fast, but there's the driver of car number 7, Darren Maggs, doing a good job out in front in this particular heat. Colin Bulmer there running second on the racetrack. Of course, Darren Maggs, the Maggs family, one of the very well-credentialed sprint car organisations in Victoria. Of course, Jack Maggs, having been around the scene for many, many years as a very, very prominent car owner. As we watch car number 22 there on screen at the present time, that's Darren Walsh in the I&V truck repairs entry. The team car, if you want the I&V truck repairs entry, and I think you'll find that this was the car that Tommy Talton, the American driver, used during his recent Australian sprint car campaign.
Exactly right. That's the car he ran throughout Christmas and the New Year period. Is Darren Maggs up front, and Dennis has mentioned some of the history involved in the Maggs racing family. They've had long association with this sport almost since the advent of sprint car racing, really.
Well, they have, David, and of course, as I said, car owner Jack Maggs, at the absolute pinnacle of his car owning career, amongst many, many great achievements, was when he had the HM Headers team with Graeme McCubbin and Garry Rush as his team drivers, and they really dominated proceedings during that 1979-80 summer racing season. A great organisation, the Maggs team, and we see second generation racer Darren Maggs continuing on that great tradition and doing it nicely out in front in this heat.
Nicely turned out car. We have a problem with Darren Walsh. He stopped on the entry to turn number 3. So interesting to see what officials do here. Whether they bring it back and start them in Indian file formation. That's what they're going to do, all right. So Darren Maggs will lead them away. Green flag on display.
Colin Bulmer has been running pretty strongly too, as has John Vogels in the number 70 entry. So the top 3 running pretty hard in this race, but Darren Maggs certainly has not put a wheel out of place, looking really good as he completes another lap.
Drivers are all doing a pretty good job to negotiate a very tough circuit tonight in front of an excellent crowd. Night 1 of the Southern Showdown, obviously also embracing round 8 of the Autopro Super Sprint Series. And indeed, the organisers indebted to I&V Truck Repairs, jumping on board this weekend as major sponsor, I&V Truck and Trailer Repairs.
There's Darren Maggs now going down to take out this heat, taking the checkered flag first. A good drive, led from the outset, never really seriously challenged, but pressed pretty hard nevertheless by Colin Bulmer, who will take the second spot. Coming in third was David Van Bremen in the number 16 car.
Exactly. So Maggs getting among the spoils, and that is the final qualifying heat. The 10-lap C main will be next on the program, and we're coming back in just a moment. And welcome back to Avalon International Raceway in Geelong, Victoria. Fairly chilly down here tonight. Great crowd in night 1 of the Southern Showdown. Now we go to the C main for you. David Van Bremen, Colin Bulmer, Graham Pitcher, Darren Maggs, Darren Walsh, Craig Lawless, John Vogels, Marcus Nelson, Mark Smith, Peter Telford, Paul Bastow, and Marcus Nelson. We've got 12 drivers to do battle here. 10-lap journey. There'll be plenty of pressure on. It's not a long way. The top 4 drivers to transfer through to the B main. Away we go. All through turns 1 and 2 safely. You can see a number of drivers just a little conservative on it. We've already alluded on a number of occasions to the ruts that have developed in this circuit. And we've got amber caution lights on Dennis Newland beside me. A problem, and that involves car number 84, Graham Pitcher, who's not had a happy night tonight.
No, he certainly hasn't had a happy night, David, as officials now call a complete restart, and they'll do it all over again. Certainly some hectic action coming away in this heat to determine the top 3. 10 laps is the race distance.
And Brent Hough was the early race leader. There's a nice shot of Adrian Parr in car 77, who's also had an interesting night. Look at the leader hitting ruts. The car looked like a supercharged pogo stick as it jumped its way through turns 1 and 2. Somehow Brent Hough managed to maintain the race lead, although the challenges are coming. Here's Parr in second. They're separated by a metre through turns 1 and 2. Nothing between them.
Certainly nothing between them, David. A good scrap this one as the car's coming through turn number 4 once again. The driver of car 77 on screen there, that's Adrian Parr, and he's looking really strong in the C main.
There's the man that Dennis had just alluded to, jumping through the holes, keeping it nice and tidy. It's all about self-preservation at this stage of the night. It's all well and good to possess a determination. Have a look at this. Number of cars involved. Car 23.
Problems here, David. The 23 car, Marcus Nelson involved.
Also David Smith in 45. And
just trying to pick up that 34, I think you'll find it is. Just trying to pick up the other car
it
involved.
was 84, Graeme Pitcher,
sorry.
who's had a night that he's really wanting to forget.
Yes, but while all that's happening, Adrian Parr picks up the pace once again down the back section of the course. And Brent Hough, and also looks like Troy Sheilds also running in strong contention in this one.
What I was trying to say before that stoppage, it's all well and good to have a determination to finish in the top 4 so you can transfer, but at the same time you've got to remember that you want to be there beyond that too, so wrecking your car's not what it's all about.
No, that's exactly right. And of course the costs in Australian sprint car racing, well, sprint car racing in general, no matter what part of the world it is, it's a very, very costly form of motorsport.
Yeah, a lot more so out here
Exactly.
because of the pathetically weak dollar. Not to mention the GST, it really has hammered this industry. Incredible fuel costs increases, and there's a number of drivers hurting badly.
Well, they are, Dave, and of course with this current situation and the controlling body, the Sprint Car Control Council of Australia, the national controlling body for sprint car racing in this country, have several delicate issues to be discussed over the next couple of years. Of course, the 372 versus 410 engine rule, a very hot topic of sprint car conversation around the country. For as many drivers that want the 410 engine introduced, there are just as many who say they don't want it introduced. One of the very hot topics of sprint car racing in this country at the present time.
Yeah, we saw a driver spinning off the track there on turn 4. Last lap, meantime, for the leading cars.
And Adrian Parr looks as though he's got this race safely in his keeping as he negotiates the final corner to take the checkered flag, and the winner of tonight's C main, there it is, Adrian Parr driving car 77 first, Brent Hough coming in second, and third man across the line in 36 was Troy Sheilds.
All right, now let's move along to the all-important B main 15-lap journey. Top 4 drivers to transfer to tonight's A main. Van Bremen, Bulmer, Pitcher, Maggs, Walsh, Lawless, Vogels, Nelson, Smith, Telford, Bastow, Nelson, Parr, Hough, Sheilds and Hunter. Big field, 16 cars. You don't see this around the country very often, do you, Dennis? 16 cars in the B main, and we are away, and it's all happening. Car 61 spinning onto the infield.
That's Garry Chippendall, David. No, you're right there. A big entry list here tonight, as we've been saying earlier in tonight's program, and 16 in the B main. Top 4 transfer through to the A main event. One quickly into stride there was Phil Johnson in the number 55 car as the field sorts themselves out down into the bottom turn once again. Driver of car number 75 on screen there as they come down the main section of the course once again. That's Shane Stephenson moving through quickly. Jeremy Warren running strongly also is David Van Bremen in the number 16 car.
The V8 Thunder and Lightning Brigade negotiating the Avalon International Raceway. She's a pretty tough night at the office for these drivers, it's got to be said. Track broke up very early in the piece. There's Jeremy Warren, the West Aussie driver, who I can report is already fully committed to contesting this series in its entirety again next summer. And you consider he's based in WA, that's an enormous effort.
Well, David, I think it's also indicative of the following that the Autopro Super Sprint Series has enjoyed. It's been marketed and publicised pretty heavily, and it's a great credit to Jeremy Warren to make this a very strong commitment to the series.
He's driven okay too without setting the world on fire on a consistent basis, but as long as he improves, that's what it's all about. They run nose to tail down the back straight.
David, just speaking of Jeremy Warren, or continuing to talk about Jeremy Warren, it's right what you say, his consistency throughout the series has been one of the very big pluses. He's scored regular points in the rounds and maintains a pretty strong position on the points table at the present time.
David Van Bremen in car number 16. We just had a nice shot of him. He currently runs second on the circuit behind the West Aussie driver Jeremy Warren, who is now on the centre of your screen. He'll negotiate turns 3 and 4. And he's driving very much with his head, keeping it nice and tidy. All of the drivers, at least by this stage of the night, know exactly where the ruts are. So, you know, with any luck in the world, they can plan to avoid as many of them as possible.
That's right. Troy Little also running strongly too. I think you'll find he's probably near or in third position on the racetrack at the present time. But Jeremy Warren really has shown some good form in this race. And as you say, treating the track with a lot of respect. And now you can see that pole line going really slick and hard there, particularly through turns 3 and 4. There's the driver of car number 16, David Van Bremen, holding down second position on the racetrack. Down the main straightaway once again, the laps are now starting to dwindle as one driver striking problems there, the race continuing on. And Troy Little holding down third now. There's car number 16 again, David Van Bremen. Of course, going a little high in fact, but Jeremy Warren has a dream run at the top of the field. Down the back section of the course once again. There's David Anderson having repaired the damage to his race car and working hard in the C main, but out of contention at the present time.
Up on the inside, they got close together there out of 3 and 4. Ando was a really hard charger, has always been that way. Not going to make much difference on this occasion though. Jeremy Warren is going to take the victory in the B main. He'll transfer now through to tonight's A main. Second, David Van Bremen. Third, Troy Little from Sydney. And fourth, Tony Moole. So they are the 4 to transfer. So the likes of Phil Johnson, David Anderson, missing out. So that certainly reflects just how tough this field is in the Auto Pro Series. Lewis, McCubbin, Swayn, Maggs, Vogels, Van Bremen, Veal, Judd, Telford, Murcott, Matthews, Bulmer, Warren, Van Bremen, Little, Moole. The 16 car field set to do battle in the preliminary feature event of the Southern Showdown at Avalon International Raceway. We get them away. Look at the dust fly as all of the horsepower's unleashed. We've got Judd in a real spot of bother in car number 11. He slams the wall. The ambers come on.
Yeah, bad luck for Jeff Judd. Well, Ian Lewis going from the pole position, certainly going to be very, very hard to beat, starting out of position at number 1. It's a top-class field, this one, David. There's some big chances in this one. Darren Maggs, Mike Van Bremen, of course, Ian Lewis, Tim McCubbin. Should be a great race.
Gee, you've really got to think that Lewis is going to prove very hard to catch starting off pole. A driver of his experience, he'll have no problems with the demanding nature of the racetrack tonight. There's Maggs in car number 7. He's looked particularly good in the second half of tonight's program. McCubbin runs second. He was the winner of the very first heat on tonight's program, so he's been sharp out of the box.
Well, he certainly has, and one just trying to pick up the number of that race car, caught up in the catch fence there, and just trying to see who the driver is. Crash officials.
It's Colin Bulmer, Dennis,
yes,
car number 12.
Yes, Colin Bulmer, the driver, involved in that incident there, bringing on the red lights. Crash crew officials, there he is. Well, he's quite okay. That's great to see. Of course, the safety standards in Australian sprint car racing very, very high. And there's the...
It's a remarkable sight, isn't it? Look at the difference in the rear tyres. That shot really gave you an idea of the stagger with these cars.
That's right. Set up on this track tonight, which has gone very slick and hard. And of course, throughout this A main event, tyre wear will play an important part, as will lap cars later in this race. As we watch the progress of the front runners, particularly Ian Lewis, as I said, starting out of the pole position, clearly the man to beat in this A main, the preliminary feature in tonight's show, a 2-night show here at the Avalon International Raceway.
I'll tell you something too, there's no doubt the drivers would be hoping for a far better racetrack tomorrow night. With all due respect to the racetrack curators, it's been a pretty ordinary racing strip tonight, and that's reflected in the fact there hasn't been that much passing. The drivers have done a great job under the circumstances. Need to serve them up a track that they can race on.
Well, that's right. With the dust clouds tonight too, you can see the dust there as Ian Lewis comes through turn number 4 once again. And not too far away there is Mike Van Bremen too. He's running strongly, as is Darren Maggs in the number 7 entry. And while all this is happening, of course, Ian Lewis out in front, looking really strong in this race. And as I said earlier, there's Tim McCubbin in the number 13 car. But Ian Lewis taking up to the high line there, now starting to lap some of these cars, going down into turn number 4 once again.
Yeah, McCubbin started this race from outside front row, so he won't want to lose any more touch with the leading car. There he is now, speaking of the leader, the Austrans entry of Ian the Fly Lewis. Not the most complimentary nickname in the world, is it? Have a look at that. Visibility is 0 out there at the moment on turn 4. How can they see?
Well, these drivers really doing it tough, David. Ian Lewis, as I said earlier, a man that's been around the racing scene for a number of years, particularly had a successful stint driving speed cars. And in fact, around about 1983, I guess it would have been, raced speed cars very successfully in the United States and performed extremely well, particularly in the southern area, running in Texas and down around that portion of the country, and drove midgets very, very successfully in America. And of course, also came very close to winning a national speed car championship the year that it was held at the former Melbourne Speed Bowl. Was right in contention virtually right up until the last few laps of the A main. So a man who's come very close to national honours in speed car racing, but doing it ever so easily out in front, driving sprint cars. And Ian Lewis, of course, been around the sprint car scene also. Very, very experienced campaigner in sprint cars.
Dennis, speaking of speed cars, the Speed Car Super Series, which was successfully conducted on the east coast of Australia in the 1998 and 99 seasons, would appear to be coming back next summer, and that is fabulous news if it happens. I know that there's a couple of people got their heads together at the moment in an effort to revisit that series that produced as good a racing as I've ever seen in any form of motorsport. And we televised every round here on Checkered Flag, and gee, I'll tell you something, we look forward to doing the same again if in fact the Speed Car Super Series does come to fruition, David, in 2001, 2002.
David, that is very good news. I know that, as you say, there are people working on it at the present time. Of course, Rod Bowen won the inaugural Speed Car Super Series several seasons ago, and it did bring together some great speed car racing. We saw some great action, and let's hope that they can get the series up and running again. I know a number of tracks are interested in taking a round, possibly no more than 5 or 6 rounds in the actual tournament, but it may well hit the travelling, and it will be a part of the travelling series of events in Australian Speedway next season.
So the order in this event still sees Ian Lewis leading. This is the preliminary feature. If you may have just joined us on the program, round 8 of the Autopro Super Sprint Series, night 1 of 2 in the Southern Shootout. This event this weekend also supported by I&V Truck and Trailer Repairs. And on next week's show, you'll see the second hour representing the second night of competition in this all-important event. Now, this will be interesting. Lewis starts to come up behind some slower cars. There's 4 or 5 drivers immediately in front of the man behind the wheel of car 18. Now, this could really play into Tim McCubbin's hands, who currently lies second on the circuit. He's already made up about 10 metres in the last lap.
Well, David, Tim McCubbin is driving a very, very good race here. Very, very tactful competitor, or should I say, using good tactics. That's what I'm trying to say here. And just he'd want to be where he is. Now, look at this. There he goes through on the inside, and Tim McCubbin taking over the race lead. A great performance that time, and got Ian Lewis where he wanted him and blasted through on the inside to take over the race lead.
Yeah, Lewis seems to have a problem. I mean, I gave him a rap before in terms of his experience, and he got up there in the loose stuff. That was not the place to be. He'd be well aware of that. McCubbin good enough to capitalise on it. So Tim is going to be very hard to catch now in car number 13. He comes up behind Peter Telford in machine number 40. You now have a look at the Sydney driver, Troy Little, car number 20.
Well, there's Darren Maggs. He's currently third. And Mike Van Bremen there is Rod Matthews in the number 9 car. Brings on the yellow lights once again.
Look how black that track has gone. That's what you call slick. The black rubber from these tyres laid down almost becomes like concrete. There's a fair bit of traction down there, and what happens when the track goes like that is that's where all the drivers run. It's the quick way round, because invariably up the top becomes so slick and loose there's nothing doing.
Well, now this gives Ian Lewis another shot at Darren Maggs. They've got a clear race track ahead of them, so these next few laps will be certainly pressure laps for the race leader Tim McCubbin, who still has Ian Lewis snapping at his heels.
Yeah, so McCubbin, Lewis, Maggs, that's the top 3 in this event, the preliminary feature.
But Tim McCubbin, if anything, just opening up a little advantage there. Well, the laps are going to certainly beat Ian Lewis as Tim McCubbin sets off now on his final lap around the Avalon International Raceway.
19 laps completed. Look at Lewis now coming from the clouds when it's all over. McCubbin is just in front. Lewis in his traditional fashion, making one heck of a race out of that. We've got the double checkered flags happening here in Avalon Raceway at Geelong. McCubbin, Lewis and Darren Maggs, the top three in the preliminary feature of round 8 of the Autopro Super Series, and the Southern Showdown night number 1.
Joining us now, first place tonight, Tim McCubbin. Tim, was a great drive. You weren't really sure about that move at the start, choosing the second starting position. You dropped back at the start, but you come good at the end.
Yeah, that's right, Colin. You know, I probably made the wrong decision at the start, but it paid off in the end, and that's what counts. So, no, we're pretty happy.
You just seem to come on there towards the end of the race. The car just slowly started to make some ground up on the end. Did the car come to you?
Yeah, I think it did. The car did. I think once, you know, we got the, you know, the rubber to the ground, and away we went. Bit of throttle control. You know, the car barely revved up at all. We just drove it nice and easy, and it just got a hold of the track. I think we're a little bit lucky. Ian, you know, he was in the hardest position trying to pass. He tried his best, but one mistake, and we got through. So yeah, we're really happy.
Yes, thank you, Colin, for C7 Sport, as we welcome you to